All right, everyone. Now we have to talk about Venezuela. It's funny to see like the legacy media almost crowing about the fact that Guaido has not managed to get rid of Maduro. It's like they don't care about the suffering of the Venezuelan people. I think they're happy because it's the effort for Guaido on this side is being led by Trump appointee Pompeo. So they're hoping that the U.S. actually fails. I think the Democrats right now are actually hoping, since you've got a more visible involvement of the U.S. diplomatic efforts in Venezuela under Trump and Pompeo than you have in the past. Like Obama didn't have a problem with socialism, so and nobody cared. I think that they're hoping that things break down there. Guaido gets he gets killed. Maduro makes a resurgence. The economy there booms or something like that. I think they're hoping for that because they realize if Venezuela falls right now, let's say Maduro gets ousted, Trump can crow about that for the next year. He can say, oh, yeah, and look, socialism fails, and yet, look, the Democrats are embracing socialism. It's an easy optics victory. There's really, keeping it simple like that with a few sentences is a lot better than the other side defending itself by explaining it point by point why that stance is wrong. We've seen this, for instance, Trump's tax plan. Rather convoluted, very effective. Most people paid less to the government. The idea that they got less of a refund, yeah, if you're paying less, I suppose you did. That's not a bad thing. You shouldn't be relying upon one lump sum at the end of the year to get by. And if you do, I feel sorry for you. In some cases, it's not people's fault. I'm not blaming people, but you should you should do whatever you can to try to avoid it. It's a very strenuous thing to do. They should just eliminate the payroll tax and shit, but that would be too easy. These economists like to keep things non-simple because it makes them more money. But the tax plan, the tax reform that Trump put in, was a good thing. Most Americans paid less. The disproportionate giving of wealth back to the 1% has to do with the fact that they pay a much higher rate. And so if you're making a lot more money and you're dealing with percentages as opposed to absolute numbers, it's going to look like they got more of a tax cut. It's actually not true. People like me got the biggest tax cut. I feel great. I can't wait till the mandate expires for next year's tax season. That's 2.5% right there. Oh my God, I can't wait to have that money. I'm going to put it right into the garden or something. Or, it'll be invested into the economy and I can do it much more wisely than Uncle Sam can. Here's the thing, though. It didn't matter, because when the Trump administration came to try to defend things, the Democrats had boiled it down to a very simple, the rich got more of a tax cut, which isn't even true, but that's what they said, and some Americans ended up paying more or the same amount. So boo-hoo for you, the tax plan's a failure. Thus, only about half of Americans actually support the fact that more than 80% of Americans got tax relief. It's hilarious. The Democrats did a good job on it. The problem is with Venezuela, the optics work in reverse. If Venezuela fails, fundamentally, even the left used to say, wow, this is remarkable. Socialism's so great. Look, they have microwave ovens and stuff. That famous Salon article from, what was it, 2009 or something, saying Chavez economic miracle, basically. They've already labeled it socialism themselves. Now people like Sanders are between a cock and a hard place because they have to explain how they can support the same economic situation that you have in Venezuela. Including, again, 2 days ago when Crowder came out and said, oh, look, Bernie Sanders' official website still has pro-socialist, like Venezuela stuff on it. I think it was yesterday. And so it was very, very funny. And it's a slap in their face already as far as political strategy goes, but it'll get 10 times worse if Venezuela falls. So that's what they're rooting for. But here's the thing. Pompeo's come out and said, well, all options are on the table for dealing with getting rid of Maduro, including a military option. Some people, like a lot of you probably, fellow libertarians, people on the right that are like, honk honk or whatever, probably have a problem with that. I actually don't, and I'll explain why, and I'll sum it up very quickly. I don't believe all options are on the table with regards to Venezuela. I do not believe that in any realm of sane reality, the Trump administration would be insane enough to start a major war right now. And it would be a major war. It would not be a cut and dry sort of, oh, we march in, we get rid of Maduro, the military magically goes la 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 and defects to our guy, so-called Guaido, who's also a socialist, and everything's fine. I don't think that he's that crazy. And certainly Pompeo, in their dealings with North Korea, the Trump administration has shown incredible foreign posturing tact. So I don't think that he's nuts enough to go after Venezuela directly. I think what you're going to see is simply the sanctions stay there, the situation stays bad. If Guaido ends up getting killed or ousted from the country or whatever, it doesn't ultimately even matter. Maduro is on his way out, apparently. There's reason to suggest that Maduro was already planning to flee the country. because he was worried the uprising was going to be larger than it was. And Guaido, I think, overestimated his support. And here's another funny thing. Doesn't this seem like a little bit of a bungled, maybe haphazard attempt to overthrow the Venezuelan government? Does this have CIA fingerprints on it, or does it have organically grown fingerprints on it? The CIA is far more effective. So this sort of counterbalances the argument of someone like the socialist apologist. Oh my God, Venezuela would be a utopia if it weren't for the evil CIA imperialists. No, it wouldn't. It was the result of shitty central planning that borrowed however many years of GDP against oil sales that never actually materialized. They went bye-bye because the oil prices dropped. Whoops. Yeah, there goes 15-20% of your actual economic productivity right there. That could be a little bit of a problem. And then, of course, the debt mounts up. Maduro said, well, I have to make the payments. The problem being that left everything else short and caused hyperinflation. And then the economy just began to downward spiral. Has nothing to do with the United States. The United States right now is sitting by awestruck that there are people here that are rambling about U.S. involvement while thousands of Russians happen to be on the ground in Venezuela. We're not the ones that are on the ground there. We're on the ground in Colombia for a very good reason, probably to defend Colombia in case the Maduro regime does collapse completely and there are a million more refugees. Yeah, that might be important since Colombia's developing, but it's still relatively fragile politically and economically and can't probably deal with that. So we're defending an ally, which, by the way, deploying troops to do that is not an aggressive posturing. When you have a destabilized state and you're on the other side of the border trying to keep the calm on the other side, that's not interventionism. I have no problem with it. It's not imperialism. Now, if our troops cross over into Venezuela, that'd be a problem. If Trump were to authorize use of force in Venezuela, I'd be extremely upset, and that would be a bridge too far for me. And so I would have to stop backing him, essentially. But he hasn't done that. And there's no reason to suggest that he will. Venezuela's already collapsed. There's no functioning economy there. You've already got... Guaido is wandering... Here's the other thing. Guaido wanders around out in the open now. Maduro hasn't sent in the troops to surround and capture or kill him. There's a reason for that. It's because he doesn't have the ability. He realizes that if he were to do that, he'd face 10 times more protests and he'd get killed. Or he would fail. The military would refuse to follow those orders. I think there are a lot of people that are growing impatient with the Maduro regime. But at the same time, getting the U.S. involved, if we were to intervene directly, I mean in a military sense, would be a disaster. I would never support that. But I don't think that that option is on the table, at least at this time. For all of Pompeo's bluster, U.S. policy has always been, we're going to say every option's on the table. Yes, from nuclear war on down to total capitulation. We will do literally anything to secure what we want, essentially speaking. Well, that doesn't mean that you're actually putting those options on the table. We're not actually going to nuke Caracas. We never were actually going to nuke Nicaragua or nuke Fidel Castro or something like that. But you have to say that the option's on the table. If you're smart, you don't take any options off, because then that's the one that your enemy will coalesce around trying to push, or they'll take advantage of the fact that your actions are somewhat limited. That's just the way that it's going to work. So you can't tell people, well, yeah, we're negotiating with this other power or nation or whatever, but there are certain lines we won't cross, so don't worry about us doing X, Y, and Z. That's a terrible way to posture diplomatically. So when I see people worrying, I'm like, calm down. When we invade Venezuela, if that happens, then you can complain. And then certainly I would be complaining too and saying, oh, look, another fucking war. Yeah, I wonder how many people will die this time and what their composition will be. How many oil wells are going to go up in flames, by the way, and it'll take a month to put the fires out. You know, you're talking about the invasion of Iraq, Saddam's fleeing forces setting fire to the gas fields, and then our soldiers marching through a rain of oil slick, basically. Yeah, that can't be good for their health either. Must have been surreal. When it's raining black, yeah, it's a little bit apocalyptic, I think. I don't think that anyone really has it in them to want to invade Venezuela. And ultimately, there's another thing involved. There's no there'd be no justification. Venezuela has no WMDs, we already know that. It's not a major military force. It would get its ass handed to it by Colombia and Brazil if they ever intervene. It's not a danger to the United States. I know it's part of the... Did Bush label them part of the axis of evil? No, I think it was Iraq, Afghanistan, and North Korea, but Venezuela was on the short list. I can remember Pat Robertson or something years and years ago suggesting that we assassinate Hugo Chavez, I think it was, at the time. And again, it would have been a terrible idea. That was, by the way, during the economic miracle bullshit period when Hugo Chavez was giving people free shit. Does it sound familiar to anyone's? Does it sound similar to anyone's campaign today? Yeah, don't take the free shit bait because it's never free. Then you have problems like you have now. But socialism is responsible, and the U.S. is at this time not intervening, which I think is good because we don't need any more fucking wars at the moment. We're already in several countries we shouldn't have any presence in at all. By the way, I support Trump when he's pulling back ambitions in Afghanistan and renegotiating with the Taliban because it looks like a way to just get out of the country and say fuck it. The sooner, the fucking better. Put those troops back, put them on the border or something, defend the nation. That's about all. Peace out.